let's talk about. Speaking of NFL, we're gonna do one NFL one. We're gonna do quarterback one. Which young quarterback do you look forward as far as your career? One of them has not played, hasn't stepped foot in an NFL game yet. The other one has. He was injured last year. Unfortunately, he didn't play the rest of the season. Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson, champ? Which quarterback, if you were an NFL GM, would you go forward with? Although it sounds unfair, but at the same time, folks, hey, look, I'm just trying to do what I'm trying to do, which is create content, and which is to give the fans something unique to talk about. So if you had a choice, champ, as a GM between Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson, who would you go with?
I'm going with Caleb.
Hmm.
I'm going with Caleb. And I'll tell you why. Anthony Richardson, I think it was a reach to pick him that high. He didn't do so well when he was in the SEC. And granted, people could say that team didn't have a lot of talent or what have you. His stats did not knock your socks off at Florida, at the University of Florida. I know because I watch the SEC every single Saturday. I don't just watch Georgia. I watch college football. And SEC is one of the main things that I covered, as you already know. But I really don't see why I had him projected to go in the late first round. Had no idea that he was going to be taken in the first, especially that high. I think he was selected fourth overall. Now it's going to be interesting to see what he does with Shane Steichen as his coach, because the thing is, Shane Steichen, they were within an eyelash of going to the playoffs last year with Gardner Minshew. They were within an eyelash this year of doing that. But I have to go with Caleb because guess what? He can flat out sling that ball. Now, I do think that he gets a bad rap for trying to play hero ball, but you have to understand something. Listen, you know this for a fact. You know where I'm about to go here. He had to play hero ball because he couldn't depend on his defense. Yeah, I mean, Lincoln Riley's formula for playing defense is not that good. I mean, it is very, very, that offense is going to always be high powered, dating all the way back to Oklahoma. When you had Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, not to mention Jalen Hurts, but that offense was always going to be on fire, putting up 60 points a game. But when it comes to that defense, they might give up 48. So
Hell,
he
they'll give
had to
up
play hero
70.
ball. So what's that?
Hell, they'll give up 70. Remember the game against
Exactly.
LSU the last time they went to the college football semi playoffs?
Yeah. So that was but yeah, that's the reason why he had to play a lot of hero ball. And if you really look at it back then, even Baker Mayfield had to play a little bit of hero ball when he played for Oklahoma. So yeah, it's a lot of I would take Caleb. Although the Indianapolis Colts almost made the playoffs last year, Caleb is coming into the best situation any young quarterback can hope to come into. You have all of these weapons. You have running backs. You have wide receivers galore. You have the number one run defense in the NFL. You have the great Montez Sweat. Shout out to PSP. Warned me about Montez Sweat. I was trying to get Chase Young, but he kept telling me, we talked all day. I'm like, I want Chase Young. I want Chase Young. He's like, hey, man, trust me, Montez Sweat. And we almost had him. But, at the very last minute, Chicago took him from us. But the thing was for you to come in with this type of not only hype, but in a sports town like a Chicago, home of the Chicago Sky, home of the Cubs, home of the White Sox, and to come in the situation that you are in, quite frankly, you can't do anything but succeed. If you don't at least have a winning season this year, although you're in the blood and guts division as far as the AFC North is concerned, with Jordan Love and a lot of those quarterbacks up there, if you don't at least have a 9-8 season going into your first year with everything they put around you, this season is a failure. And guess what? All heads are going to roll in because now you have to fire the coach and everything because it will prove it just wasn't Justin Fields. It will prove it just wasn't just the Fields. It was coaching as well. So if I had to pick one, I would have to say Caleb, not just because of his talent, but because, he's a Heisman Trophy winner and He has tenacity, and also this is the greatest position you could ever put a rookie quarterback in right now. Anthony Richardson, he's not the king of that division right now. We all know who the king of that division is, CJ Stroud. And
However, you
there's a
would
lot of
put him
questions about.
second. You definitely would put him second because we all know how much you feel about Trevor Lawrence, especially the contract the Jaguars gave him.
Yes, yes. But he more than likely will be second. I mean, and depending on how the mayonnaise man Will Levis plays, you know, he'll he'll fall somewhere between second and third in that range. But had to pick one, Caleb.
I'm gonna go with Caleb because I think this is the best situation for the Chicago Bears. It would have been much better had you gotten him an offensive lineman because, as you always say, champ, quarterback can't throw behind his back. This time, Chicago, later in the season, they improved defensively, and that was also because of the addition of Montez Sweat as well as other players as well. Montez Sweat went on to having a really good year, made the Pro Bowl, first time double-digit sacks. I told you about Montez.
Yeah, you did.
When you look at Chicago, they're loaded with weapons. They added DeAndre Swift. They brought him there. They also have Cole Kmet, who shout out to BRF Sports. He talked about how underrated Cole Kmet is. You added Rome Odunze, which the Falcons they should have drafted, but instead they decided to go with Michael Penix Jr. You could have went with Rome, or you could have went with Dallas Turner, but instead the Falcons went with Michael Penix, supposedly because he's the guy to be the successor to Kirk Cousins. Okay, you got him. You got Keenan Allen. So you loaded offensively. I still have issues with the head coach, though. So I think Caleb Williams, I think he has a really good case to win Offensive Rookie of the Year as long as he can stay healthy. Now, he's going to have to do a better job playing less hero ball. But how is he going to do that still with the concerns about that offensive line? Anthony Richardson, and plus, to your point, champ, I've said it before. There was no way, it doesn't matter which quarterback that you have, there's no quarterback that's going to overcome Lincoln Riley's defense. And that has been the problem with him in Oklahoma and in USC. And the reason why I told you he went to USC because he didn't want to deal with that SEC smoke. Oklahoma and Texas, they were going to the SEC, which they will be in 2024. Do you really think that Lincoln Riley could compete against that? Against Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, Texas A&M, Florida, Tennessee. I mean, there's a lot of competition that you got to deal with, and of course Texas, because Texas will be there as well. So he's gonna go to the big. He's gonna go to the Big Ten
That's even
and
worse.
USC. You got to deal with Penn State, Ohio State, the reigning national champions, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So the likelihood of you winning a national championship or even a Big Ten championship, slim to none. But I think with Caleb, Chicago is right. And not only is the best situation for him, it's the best situation because Chicago finally, historically, look at all the quarterbacks that have come into that franchise. How's that turned out? The best quarterback they've had in this generation was Jay Cutler. That ain't much to brag about.
No.
So with Caleb, I think this is the best situation for him. He also received a lot of flack for the fingernails and other things that weren't related to football. But my thing is, look, the kid is still young. He has a tremendous potential. He hasn't gotten to any legal issues whatsoever.
No.
So let's wait and see what he can do. I wouldn't be mad if you pick Anthony Richardson because you can make the argument if Anthony Richardson had played the entire season, who knows? The Colts would have won the division. And Anthony Richardson, yes, I understand, champ. I wasn't sold on his accuracy coming out of Florida, but shout outs to Roundup, and he brought it up. Look at the talent he had around him. It wasn't
Yeah.
like he was playing against top tier guys. It wasn't like he had the type of talent that CJ Stroud had at Ohio State or Stetson Bennett had at Georgia or
Yeah.
what Caleb Williams had. So imagine if you put Anthony Richardson with better talent during his time in Florida. perhaps we would have had a different perception of him.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I think we would have. I think that we would have had and I blame that a lot on coaching as well. You know, they have not had a lot of coaching stability down there in Florida. I always say this: if you want to get fired quick, go to two places. You go to the SEC or go to Los Angeles. So if you want to get fired quick for not winning, go to the SEC. They go to Los Angeles. So they will fire you quick if you do not win in one of those two places, especially in Auburn. You know, they had a coach in Gene Chiswick. He won a national championship. 2 years later, he was fired. So you want to get fired quick for not winning?
And
Los
Gus
Angeles
Malzahn,
Lakers and the
yeah,
SEC.
and Gus Malzahn during after Gene Chiswick's departure did a very good job during his time in Auburn.
Yeah, he
And
just couldn't beat Alabama. But I always say this, you know, back then, even with my Georgia Bulldogs, you know, as many players as we put, who could?
they
I
were in a
mean, who,
class and category by itself. There's
I
no
mean,
shame
yeah,
in
I
that.
mean, people we talk about, you know, he never beat Alabama. Okay, who could? I mean, it's just kind of like asking yourself who could beat Mike Tyson back in the day. Nobody. So I mean, it's kind of like, you know, a lot of teams who beat Alabama in the college football playoffs and in the, you know, and in the national championship back then before we finally got on the hump or got over the hump and beat them, they didn't see Alabama a lot. So
Right.
you wasn't able to predict what you were going to throw at. On an average, I will say this: you're going to meet Alabama at least twice. If you're an SEC team, you're going to meet them once during the season, and if you're any good, you're going to meet them again in the SEC championship. Nick Saban ain't losing to you twice, so it's going
Yeah.
to be interesting to see what they do without Nick Saban. Big ups to Nick Saban, though, man. We'll miss you.
Yeah, big ups, big ups.